Hi there, I'm Ang Braun, Executive Director of Genesis House. Genesis House is a shelter for women who have experienced intimate partner or family violence and their children. Every year, we see between 50 and 60 women and between 50 and 75 children. Our service area is really quite large for a rural shelter. We would go all the way into the west, Crystal City, Pilot Mound, and Swan Lake First Nation, to the north, Highway number 2, and to the east, Rosa River First Nation, as well as Dominion City. This shelter was built in 1994, actually, and this space that we're standing in is the space that most women would come through when they first access shelter. This is the space where we would welcome them, their children, and provide some coffee, a place to sit down and relax, and get started with telling their story. Our shelter is considered a small shelter in the province. We have 5 bedrooms. That would mean we could take 5 women at one time and 11 kids for a total of 16 people. 1994, this shelter was built, but 1984 is actually when the shelter was established. The first shelter we were in looked considerably different than this one. Certainly didn't have a luxurious hallway or counseling spaces like this one has. At that time, the shelter was established in 1984 because there was many families of low German descent that we were seeing coming back and forth between here and Mexico. And there was concerned people in the community, Eden Mental Health, the police departments, MCC, as well as community members saying, what are we going to do to help these families? And the shelter was one of the things that came out of that. So this is our crisis office, and this is where Genesis House staff take that initial crisis call. It's a 24-hour service, and the calls can come from anywhere in the province, but primarily the service area that I mentioned earlier. The calls are completely confidential. There is no caller ID. There's no way for us to know unless you tell us who you are or where you are calling from. We will not know who you are. One of the things that the staff do notice with the crisis calls, people can call for any variety of reasons related to violence. One of the things that they do notice, though, is that a lot of times people don't identify. Unless there's physical violence, they're not sure that emotional abuse or sexual abuse necessarily constitutes their being in shelter or using the crisis line. And of course, all of those types of abuse makes it important for you to reach out for help. So the staff can help a person that's calling with a variety of issues. It does not have to only be physical abuse. It can actually even just be coping with the relationship you're in, or checking to see whether some of the things that might make you uncomfortable about your relationship are in fact valid. Do you have valid points? And somebody that's confidential and a third party to bounce ideas off of. The other calls that we take quite often, and certainly in the last couple of months with the crisis that's been across the country, the pandemic, has been the increase of calls from family and friends, trying to figure out how they can help their friends and family that they feel might be at risk of violence in the home, especially when the stress level goes as high as it has been. So the staff have actually been spending a lot of time on the crisis line, helping other people navigate and figure out how they can best support family and friends that they feel may be in trouble. The other calls that staff have been taking quite a bit of, and actually always have taken a lot of calls, is from other service providers. Being rural and dealing with domestic violence or intimate partner violence is complicated. These people are our neighbors, they're our friends, and it's a difficult topic. So a lot of times it is a service provider's calling to ask for advice or support or help for somebody that they have in their office. What would the next step look like for them? So the staff also can help those types of callers and actually have been doing that increasingly more in the last number of years, and the systems have gotten more complicated. So having the staff be able to walk you through some of those pieces has been fantastic. So for folks that are watching this video, they will probably recognize that being rural means that each of the small communities that fall within our service area are unique. They're not all exactly the same. And part of what the staff need to be aware of is if a person is moving to Carmen or Morris or Crystal City, what supports will be available for that woman when she moves to that community? Do they have a family resource center? Do they have a food bank? What type of mental health supports or addiction supports might be available? So the staff have to really be well versed in a variety of issues and supports that are out there, and do a terrific job at being able to connect people to the types of supports that they're looking for. Not necessarily always requiring them to come into shelter, but actually just getting the referrals they need to get them on the right track. So the space we're in right now is our meeting room, and we were really lucky when they chose us for a new shelter in 1994. The other shelter that was up at that time for a new shelter was Steinbach, and they're still waiting actually. So this meeting room is the space that we have our support groups in. It's where we do our staff meetings, and it's also where we do the intakes and that process for when a woman enters shelter for the first time. And let me tell you, there is a lot of paperwork involved with anything like that. So when she comes in, we do a very basic intake form and look at basic needs first. Does she need any medical care? Has she eaten? When is the last time she's had a rest? And the same thing for the children. The basic needs are the first thing we look at in doing the intake process. If all of those things are okay and she's okay to proceed, then we will start asking some of the other more detailed questions that we need to know about her situation so that we can best help her. Some of the programs that, while a woman is in shelter, some of the programs that she will take part in is support groups. We have residential support groups, as well as a lot of one-on-one counseling. She will be looking at what decisions she needs to make, and that takes a lot of thought. And having a staff member, a counselor, to kind of work through what her options are and figure out what will be the best move for her to make for herself. And that's one of the philosophies of the shelter, absolutely, is that the women that we see, they know the answers to their own situations. They just need some help, sometimes in understanding what their options are, and somebody to help bolster their courage to make the decisions. So for a woman to come into shelter, that is a huge, absolutely huge decision. Sometimes the decision that she makes comes out of an immediate emergency. There's been a violent incident in her home and she needs to leave for the safety right in that moment. Sometimes it's something that's built up over many, many years and she has made a decision to leave, but maybe not forever. Maybe it's just a time out. So leaving is a very, very big decision. Nobody does that lightly. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to speak up and say, there's something happening in my home that's not okay. I'm not safe. My children are not safe. And coming to shelter is often a very last resort. So the mandate of the shelter is really, really specifically women and children. However, we do have every year a few men that are also experiencing violence in their relationship. And we do have supports available for men that are experiencing violence in their relationship as well. Doesn't look exactly the same as the shelter does for women, but we do have safe accommodations and the counseling and the basic needs, the same for men as we would for women. So we're in the largest of the 5 bedrooms that the shelter has. And when a woman comes to shelter, it's primarily communal living, except for the bedroom. That space is private for her and her children. And if she has no children, then she has a room on her own. So this space is not a large space, but it is a safe and comfortable space. If you look around this room, you'll see the quilts, the pillows, all of these things are donated by community, and we simply would not be able to function without the support of community. We have Project Genesis that makes sure that every woman and child that comes through the shelter gets a quilt to take home with them when they leave. And you know, it's more than just getting a quilt. The idea behind Project Genesis is really wrapping a person in love, knowing that somebody else in community was thinking about them, even though they don't know who they are, and providing that quilt for them. It's an amazing gift, and the staff just love being able to give that quilt to the families. When a woman is in shelter, all of her basic needs are met. So as I said earlier, we'll make sure that if there's medical attention required, eyeglasses, dental, all of those things will be taken care of, prescriptions, while the woman is here. And the same goes for her children. If there are other special needs, dietary needs, we'll also make sure we check in with each family to make sure that we're meeting the needs that they have. It can be difficult for a person actually even to express all of the needs that they have, because for a long time they've not really had anyone to listen. So when a woman comes into shelter, often the staff speak with them. Well, of course they speak with them daily about how things are going for them here, and if there are things that are missing or things that we could help them with. The other thing that happens when families are in shelter together is that we have such a massive blend of cultures. It's really amazing when you walk into our kitchen and you see the variety of different types of families that are spending their time with us. And the sharing of recipes, the sharing of meals, sitting around that dining room table and talking about their life experiences. it is just an amazing experience to be able to walk that journey with someone, and to have people that were strangers when they came in develop a really strong bond, and between different cultures. So we could have a First Nation woman and a Low German speaking woman creating supper together in our kitchen. It is really quite amazing. So when a woman first gets a chance to get comfortable in her bedroom, she'll notice, and oftentimes we'll get questions about it, she'll notice that there's a purse in her room, and she'll ask if someone has forgotten something from their previous stay. And the amazing thing is that's not the case at all. The community has also come together and provides a purse filled with a variety of different types of needs that you'd have, things you'd carry in your purse. Kleenex, lotion, all of those types of things. Again, a gift for the woman that may not have received a gift for a long, long time, and recognizing that someone in community is thinking about her needs, even if she hasn't put herself first for a long time, someone else is thinking about her. Most people would be surprised to know that those that walk through our doors are often not walking, they're being carried because they're children. The majority of clients that we see are kids under 5 years old. So I'm standing in front of our change table, which is also in our laundry room, which is used a lot. You can imagine if you're coming in with a family that you will require diapers, wipes, all the needs that you would have at home, you would require here as well. So we are so grateful to community for the amount of donations we get. People remember the families that we have, and they consistently donate throughout the year, not just at Christmas time. They think about us all year long and make sure that the supplies that a family needs while they're here, diapers, wipes, and groceries, are always available to the women and children that we serve. We try to be accessible to everyone in community. And that means that we need to be available in as many different languages as we can be. Right now, we have a staff person that can speak Spanish. We have High German, Low German, English, French, and if we need other supports, we reach out to community partners to ask for help when it comes to translation. And we do often have to reach out to supports for women in shelter to help us help them. We also have a wheelchair accessible bedroom as well as a wheelchair accessible washroom, and the majority of the house is accessible for someone that would require a wheelchair. We also provide service for sexual assault victims, and that's something I think most people aren't aware of. If there is a sexual assault, we would be able to support them if they were not safe to go back to their own home. They could access shelter for the period of time that they needed to be safe until either the perpetrator was caught or a safe plan was developed. The other group that people might not think about that we serve is abused elderly folks. So if there is a person that is struggling with abuse and they're elderly, they can also access shelter as women. For men, of course, we would find another safe alternative. But we do support elderly folks that are experiencing abuse. If you look around, you'll see behind me, beside me, this room is filled with everything that a person would need. Pajamas, quilts, all of these items are donated by community, and I cannot express the amount of gratitude we have and what a big difference it makes to the families that we serve. The types of donations we receive, pajamas, groceries, toys at Christmas time. And we do provide Christmas toys for families that are in shelter, and actually even families that we're working with long term. The amount of generosity within our community is something that I don't think people experience anywhere else, and at least not across our province when I get to compare with my colleagues. I think this is my favorite room in the whole house. It is the playroom, and there's nothing like coming to work and hearing laughter and joyful sounds coming out of this space. Most of the families that come through the shelter do bring some children with them, and it's just healing to hear that laughter and the joy coming from this space. We have a full-time children's counselor on staff, and of course, that's where I started my job with the shelter, was in the children's program, and it is really my favorite space. I think the other piece around having a full-time children's counselor on staff provides that opportunity to break the cycle of violence for the kids that are staying with us. It provides an opportunity to show a different way of expressing emotions, provide some different options for how you express your feelings. The other thing that it does, and our children's counselor gets to do, which is a fun part, is work with the moms and kids together and do that parent-child attachment piece. quite a bit of work around parenting and learning how to become the parent that she wants to be, when for a long time that might have been stifled in her home, not really being allowed to take that type of role, to take charge as the mother. So this is really an awesome space, and again, much of the stuff that you see behind me, beside me, comes from community, the donations that we've received, and many grants. And probably no surprise that the Youth in Philanthropy often will say yes when we apply to them, because I think being a kid isn't that long ago for the Youth in Philanthropy groups. So this is our children's space. We really try hard to give this a homey feel, and the space right now that we're in, the living room and dining room area, is all communal living. So when families are here, other than their bedroom, this is the living space and the space where they will spend a fair amount of time together. So a lot of good stuff happens in this space. A lot of difficult conversations also happen around the dining room table and at the living room, just watching different programs. It really is about building relationships with the people and just spending the time listening to someone else's story. One of the things I think that we hear often from people is, well, why does the woman choose to stay in a relationship where there's violence? And I think for the staff that have worked here for many years, that question, we've kind of tipped it on its head and said, why does the abuse continue? Why does the abuser not be held accountable for his behavior? But if we look at what we hear from the women, why does she stay? First and foremost, something that has never changed in all the time that I've worked at the shelter is the fact that the woman entered that relationship because of love, and that's what she's staying for, is the love and the hope that something will be different, that the abuse will stop. And that statement comes from pretty much every woman that enters our doors. They just want the abuse to stop. Other reasons that a woman might stay in that relationship are fear of leaving, fear of the unknown. How will she support herself? The idea that the children will need their father. While he abuses her, he may not abuse the children, and so it feels to her like there's not a good reason to leave. So she stays for the kids. She stays because she may lose all the support. Her church support, her community support, her extended family may not support her choice to expose the violence in her home and the abuse, and they may not support her choice to leave. So there are many reasons why a woman would stay in that relationship. And all of those things are talked about both in support groups as well as in private counseling sessions with the women. The staff take a lot of pride in the way Genesis House smells and feels when you walk in. The cleanliness is super important for everyone that stays with us. The staff really believe that part of feeling safe is feeling clean. So they take great efforts to make sure that everything is kept in tip-top shape. In the mornings, when they have house meeting with families, often there is a decision made about who's going to be cooking the meals, who's going to be doing prep, who's going to be doing the cleanup, as well as making sure that the living room, playroom, and the washrooms are cleaned as well. Our night shift will follow up to make sure that all of those things are done to a standard that is reasonable for people and make sure that things are kept on track. Our pantry, which is to my right, is filled to the top with all kinds of canned goods and everything you can imagine for baking. It is an amazing pantry filled with donations from the community. We would never be able to make it without the community and the support. With all of the donations, the quilts, the cleaning supplies, the diapers, the list really goes on and on and on. We are able to provide good quality meals that meet the Canada Food Guides based on those donations. It's an amazing gift that we get from community. The dining room table in front of me really has a lot of hard conversations that take place in that space. The women that come, that share meals together, share a lot more than that. They share stories of their dreams, their goals, where they've come from, where they're heading. And those stories are sometimes difficult to hear. The dreams are amazing, and we're so proud to be able to be a part of that growth for the families that we see. One of the things I think that the staff are very good at is making sure that when they're talking with other people in the community, whether it's on our crisis line or whether it's just in a casual conversation around how do you help someone if you think that they're in an abusive situation? What type of intervention can you as an individual do? And I think the staff are really well versed in the first and foremost important thing, which is really listen and believe the person that's telling you that something's going on. People don't lie about domestic violence or abuse in their home. It's too difficult. There's a lot of shame that comes with it, and people don't lie about it. So listen and believe. I think the next step is help them find the supports that they need. They have the answers within them. They may just need somebody to help them find out who to connect with to get to the next step, to help them decide what that next step actually even looks like. It's very difficult not to want to swoop in and save someone if they're your sister or your best friend and they're telling you some of the things that are happening in their home. However, it's really important that you consider your own safety, and it's really important that your friend knows that she has the strength to break out of that situation herself. She just needs a cheerleader. She needs support. She needs someone to help her navigate complicated systems. So we would suggest doing those things, not trying to swoop in and rescue her, because she can do it on her own. She just needs somebody to listen and somebody to help. So thank you for coming on this tour with me. You've come through our front doors and you're now in our dining room kitchen area where a lot of hard work and excellent meals happen. I hope that if you ever do find that you need help or that someone you know will need help, that this will give you a bit more information about Genesis House and give you the confidence and courage to reach out if you ever do need help. Thank you so much for watching.